Well, this is another, well, it's probably afternoon now, or certainly it's late in the Friday morning. And Pat and I were having a little discussion before we came in the air about the question of time. You see, we
Uh,
deal in very witty, meaty topics, do we, Pat?
yeah, Jude, in the golden days, I don't think a farmer in Neanderthal days walked out and said, "Oh, it's 10 past 9 or whatever." He got
Looking
up in
at
the
his
morning and
wristwatch.
he did his whatever he had to do, and then at night when it got dark, he went in and went to sleep. But now, like oh, I have to milk the cows at 6:30. The world has changed. Who decided that they were going to compartmentalize into seconds and minutes and hours and days and months and years?
Yeah, and it
Like, who
doesn't
came
mean
up
you
with
get
it?
any more of them either.
No, it does. Of course, it doesn't. But
I think
I'd love to
also, of
know
course,
how the days and hours and minutes and seconds. Who came up with the idea and who evolved them? If you want, for want of a better
yeah.
expression.
It's strange, all right. And isn't it funny too that 10 seconds in a dentist's chair is longer than 10 hours in a really good football game or
Absolutely.
something.
By the way, Dr. Cons, I hope you like my new position for our video calls.
I am very
Somebody
impressed,
told
Pat,
me.
but it looks. You tell me what the difference is, because what I see in the background is your house, which is stacked with bookcases.
What do you call it? Several people said I look like a hologram. A white hair and a white beard, and we're all, I'm Donegal drains lot, so we're white faced. And several people said, Pat, you look like a hologram. You don't look real at all.
They're just jealous, Pat. They're just jealous. That's all that's wrong with them.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a beautiful day, and I gather in Donegal,
Absolutely,
and it's a stunning day here. Absolutely beautiful. So we should be so glad we're alive. Okay.
Absolutely.
And saying that, one of the ways we make ourselves glad is by making it people who watch this miserable. So let's get cracking. There's a lot of topics and people to be discussed this week, but I think we can't. The first one we'll have to go with is Trimble, Lord Trimble. You have to be careful when you're talking about someone who's recently dead. They say whatever the Latin is, nil nisi bonum or whatever. But he certainly was heaped with, from all directions, he was heaped with praise. And people use words like giant and the great service he had done, and he'd sacrificed himself and he sacrificed his party. Would that be your take on him?
Jude, somebody took an offense one time. I was on a radio program when I used the term schizophrenic, and I don't mean it in a pejorative sense, but I am schizophrenic when it comes to Trimble. There's one part of me that says, yeah, look, he deserves credit for what he done. But then there's another part of me saying, given, he gets this great credit for the Good Friday Agreement. And, I had a friend on the other day, he said, Pat, he was kicked, he was pulled, kicking and screaming all along the way to signing the Good Friday Agreement. And he said, I don't see why giving people what they rightly deserve, the nationalist people. Let's run this again. 50 years of unionist domination, 93% police force. I know the B specials, 100% unionist, Protestant, and whatever. And to sort of sign an agreement saying that about 45% of the people who live here are entitled to fair treatment. Do you deserve great kudos for that? But right, that's the negative side. Let me finish, and then I know you've got plenty of opinions on this. Mm-hmm. The other side is he went against his own people to sign that agreement because they regarded it as a zero-sum game, that anything that he signed, they were losing. And he got a lot of abuse. He was threatened. He still went ahead. And for that reason, he deserves a lot of credit. So, Jude, the term, and I'm not using it lightly, but I'm almost schizophrenic on it because I can see both sides, and it's like sitting on the fence on it, and I'm not quite sure what side of the fence I'll come down on.
I have something of that, but maybe a wee bit more to one side rather than another. He was very lucky, not lucky, but he was a surprise choice as leader, because everybody assumed at the time he became leader first that John Taylor would be the leader. The present Lord Kilclooney. But Trimble came from nowhere. Well, not nowhere, but he certainly wasn't as prominent a figure as John Taylor.
Yeah.
I must say that there's a couple of things. he didn't have the demeanor or the presence of a leader. There was something academic and tetchy and mincy about his sort of bearing, which made it hard for me to be impressed by him. The other thing is that he, after the Good Friday Agreement, I remember the day after the Good Friday Agreement was signed, or after the weekend, because it was on a Friday. I seem to remember going up to Coleraine shortly after, and on the side of a barn, someone had written in large letters, "Well done, David." And I was wondering, are they being ironic, or are they really applauding him? I suspect it was irony. He certainly, his party found it hard, and I think he found it hard to give the things that he should have come naturally, as you say. And when he signed the agreement, what was the first thing he said to journalists? The unionists, I get up from this table and the union is as safe as it was when I sat down. Now, that was the worst thing, I think, one of the worst things he could possibly have said, because he immediately painted the Good Friday Agreement in terms of not opportunity, but sort of semi-crisis.
Fortress time. I remember the time, I can't remember who it was, said to me, he got up from the table and the first thing he said was a negative. Basically, he was telling the Nationalists, you've gained nothing. No, Jude, that was not the way to sell the agreement. In fact, basically the whole tenet of his thing was, we've given nothing away.
Do you think he did that deliberately, or did he do it because he believed it, or did he do it because he thought that would go down well with his own constituency?
Well, he was getting accused of sellout, and Jeffrey and Arlene had already, I think, walked away, or soon to walk away. There were people leaving and so on. So, it was the worst thing, of course, Jude, as you well know, and unionism is to be accused of being a Lundy, and he was being accused of being a Lundy by signing this agreement with the Nationalists. And Jude, but I think isn't there a term, choleric? He was that red face. And I remember watching him one day, and I think it was ITN, or I know it was an ITV show on the morning one time, when they brought on, I think it might have been Martin McGuinness or something, and they weren't talking to McGuinness, and he got up and left in the middle of a live debate. And and I remember he got a Noel Thompson on The View one night. He really went bananas. He started roaring at him, and so, Jude, I can say I sat beside David Trimble for about an hour and a half one day in a dinner in Derry. He was perfectly fine, but you wouldn't say he was warm or cuddly. He was very, and I wouldn't say affable, but he was polite, nice, and friendly in his own way. But you're right, Judy. He was basically an academic, and Judy, he wasn't a natural politician. Absolutely no way he was a natural politician. Yeah. But I don't know. The Unionist Party seem to reckon he was their best shot.
Yeah, but I'm not sure what the reasons for that was. I suppose he brought an intellect, to it, in that he was a smart guy and all the rest of it. But he also, I would get the feeling that he would have preferred being in a study or at an opera or something rather than interacting with people.
Yeah,
he didn't seem to be a people person, as they say.
No.
The other thing I remember what he said was that he would consider, maybe he said it in his Nobel Peace Award. He said that he would concede that the Northern Ireland had been a cold house for Catholics.
Yeah.
And he was lauded for that. That was a wonderful concession to make. I thought, a cold house. I mean, that sounds like, it was a bit chilly and they weren't that welcome. It's a bit more severe than that. I mean, there were lives of people's families were ruined for decades. People had to emigrate. I mean, so it wasn't just a little cold house.
But Jude, here's a question for you. In Dublin, they're flying the flag, the tricolour at half-mast for Trimble. The Lord Mayor, I think she's a member of the Green Party, it was someone Conway, I can't remember what her name is. She's opened a book of condolences. Now, I'm just throwing this in deliberately stir the pot. When Martin McGuinness died, did anybody bother doing, in Dublin, did they open a book of condolences? Did they, and the point I'm making, is this sort of middle class Ireland? One person's acceptable, the other person isn't.
Well, it fits into the whole thing of the South's attitude, the forces that be, the powers that be's attitude to the Shinners. they talked about everybody. They talked about when David Trimble died. They talked about what the great contribution he'd made to peace and the risks he took. And I mean, it was just not just personal, but political risks, but even some personal risks. And we saw shots of him being crowded and people booing him, and him and the wife getting into a car. But none of them mentioned Gerry Adams or Mark McGuinness.
No.
I mean, they were the guys that too. Well, there's more than I'm sure, but those two in particular, they took real risks. They took risks that they would be killed. And we all know that. But the names weren't even mentioned when they told us.
Dr. Collins, you did a thing on your own blog there last week about the Irish Times, about all their different columnists. And the conclusion, I think it was based on what was in the Phoenix magazine.
That's right.
And they said the one voice and all the Irish Times columnists missing was a nationalist Republican voice. And all their columnists reflect the establishment, either centre or right of centre. There's no left-wing columnists.
That's right. And they noted the point that it wasn't just that this guy that was writing this had a thing about the Shinners and really wanted the Shinners to get on well. He said the Sinn Féin view is the majority view in the north of Ireland.
Yeah.
So why isn't that? I mean, I've said that before myself, but I thought it was put rather better there and a more informed way. There's no doubt there's a bias there. Anyway, God be good to David Trimble. I did an interview with him once, and I was kept sitting, and he was bustling around the place, and he passed me, and he was whistling an air from some opera. Nod, and then and he used the term. I said, well, if you were marking that some politician as an essay, what would you give it? Would you give it a B or a B plus? Or he said, yeah, probably beta plus.
Beta.
A little correction there. You obviously don't know Greek, but I do. Anyway.
Better. Anyway, yes.
May God smile on David Trimble today. Okay,
absolutely.
Let's go from someone who has died to somebody who, in my opinion, is a walking dead man. It's Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer's been really busy all week. Tell us about it, Pat.
I know, Jude. Dennis Murray, who was the BBC correspondent. Dennis is a very smart guy, and he's
got an MBE,
As he fair play to him. But anyway, Dennis made I'm saying Dennis the last day made the point. Look, people are pining for Jeremy Corbyn, and that ship has sailed. Starmer, if you believe in left-wing politics or Labour, Starmer is there. And if and no matter how bad he is, he's still better than Boris Johnson type thing. And I've read that and seen that before. If so on. But Jude, this week, Starmer sacked his shadow transport. I think it's called Sam Tarry. I think it might be.
That's right, Sam Tarry.
That's Sam Tarry. I don't know even where I pulled that name out of the top of my head. But anyway, Sam Tarry, he sacked him for supporting a strike. Now, Mike Lynch, who I think is a breath of fresh air, the RMT guy, says Starmer better make up his mind. Is he going after the Daily Mail and the Telegraph type, or is his natural constituency, the Daily Mirror type, the working people? Because he says basically it seems to be that he's totally forgetting about the natural constituency. Like on Monday last, Starmer went to Liverpool, and by the way, I'm amazed none of the mainstream media followed up on it. He had a meeting in a restaurant where several people confronted him. And there's a bit on social media where this woman absolutely berates him about writing for The Sun, about sneaking into Liverpool and not meeting the people, and so on. And she says, what's the difference between you and a Tory? She says, there's none. And so she says, don't come here type thing. So on. And Jude, I thought I'd raise this a massive big question. Britain has totally become, I don't see the difference. If you can tell me the difference between Cameron and Blair and Keir Starmer, okay, I am harking back to someone like Corbyn. Jude, who represents the interests of people at the bottom? Who represents the people who are struggling at a cost of living? This morning, Shell's profits are something like 5.5 billion in the first quarter, and yet people are struggling. Do you see when it comes to September, October, and the weather gets colder? Can people afford? Apparently, their fuel bill is going to be something like 3,500, up from about 1,500.
Well, you asked what's the difference between them, and I think there's very little difference. Now, both would say, of course, the Tories would say as well, that they're really concerned for ordinary people, and that's why they've given them, furlough, and that's why they've given them support. And was it 1,200 that Richie Sunak said he would give them? But in fact, we should keep our focus firmly, I think, on the Labour Party. The secret's in the name. It's the Labour Party. It's the party that supports labouring people, people who work, working class people. And yet, it seems to me that they are so... Keir Starmer, I'm convinced, has looked at Tony Blair, who at one time was a great man for focus groups and so on, and opinion polls, and he has concluded that the more he can appear a latter-day Tony Blair, the more he can be moderate, distance himself from the unions and so on, the more likely he is to get into office. Well, he may be right. I don't think he is, but he may be right. But it won't be worthwhile. What's the point? What is the point? That guy, Sam Tory, by the way, said about him whenever he got kicked out, he said that Starmer is making a complete car crash and a fundamental mistake in his attitude to the unions. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. You sort of sit and watch and sort of go, what is the point of the Labour Party now? If they're going after the same territory as the Tory party, you sort of go, well, right, what's, but where is, that? But then I get confused, Jude. See, the last day, the last election, Boris Johnson won all the seats in Bradford and Leeds and all these working class constituencies because he almost went more Labour than Labour. He said, chuck out all these foreigners who bring back wages, bring back and all the rest. And Trump played the same one. A billionaire goes round to the Rust Belt states and says, you people have been left behind. I'm the man to look after you, a billionaire. So in other words, the Labour Party, who was supposed to be the party, or which is supposed to be the party of the working people, they're going for the middle class. In fact, all the trendies at the universities and all the rest are voting Labour. All these sort of, and the people who used to go down the mines are now voting Tory. So I'm totally confused about, but Jude, I think the Tories are actually far clever, and so the populists, Jude, and this sounds but they're telling the sort of morons, look, vote for us and we'll look after you. And if you're a working person and you think Boris Johnson and the Bullingdon Club boys will look after you, you're a total clown.
Well, that Sam Tory isn't the only front bencher who has stood in the picket lines. There's two others. I think maybe it was today or yesterday. Kate Osborne, who actually is the Shadow Northern Ireland private secretary, permanent private secretary. She's one of them, and another woman called Paula Barker. They both have gone and appeared on the picket lines. And in fact, if you look back, I remember reading an article telling me that when Labour was in government, there was occasions when there were strikes and members of the government, Labour government, went and joined the people on the picket line. I mean,
did you hear what Starmer's saying? He's saying they're not, it's got nothing to do with going on the picket line. It's breaking discipline. That a government in waiting does not do pickets or strikes because it looks bad, and it's all about discipline and so on. But Jude, you know something, like you said it earlier on, the sort of, it's almost the name, Sir Keir Starmer is leading the Labour Party. Like Tony Benn gave up as because he was a member of Labour. He says, he says, how did you think the establishment got us? He says they took things and ensured other people didn't get them. And he says that's how they got power. And he didn't want that. But Sir Keir Starmer, like, he is part of the establishment. He's a QC. I would say he's much more at home in Wimbledon rather than down in Durham.
Oh, for sure. I think the man of the moment is, in fact, as you mentioned, Mick Lynch. And he has said several things about him. He says Starmer's got to sort out whose side he's on in this balance of power struggle. I agree with that. He says there's too many poor people in this country and there's a poor distribution of wealth and power. And Starmer needs to identify which people he's going to appeal to. Well, you see, this is the thing. He wants to take for granted the working class vote while he busily pursues the middle ground. It's not going to happen. There's going to be too many strikes this summer.
Judy, the profits of the corporations are through the roof of the big companies. I read the last day, I think it's the top 350 bosses from FTSE companies are all on massive wages. Shareholders have never had it so good. And yet they're saying inflation. They're trying to say, oh, we can't afford to give the real workers because of that inflation. Dude, how come inflation's happening when real workers haven't got a pay raise in something like 14 years?
Yeah. I was listening this morning to a news program, and it's a CEO, a woman who's the CEO of some big company in Britain, I think an energy company maybe. And she was talking about, we were going to give them 4% each year. And I mean, that was great and so on. And the interviewer asked her how much she earned. And she danced away from it. She didn't answer. She didn't give it. And he asked again, and she danced away again. And then he said, thanks very much. I just think that's ridiculous. I think that's a failure of journalism. If you ask a question, you should either push really hard to get the answer or say, well, you're not prepared to give me the answer to that, are you? And they'll have to say, yes, I'm not prepared to give it to you. But get it out in the open. Okay, let's switch slightly from the Labour Party to the Tories and these hustings. Have you watched any of these debates between...
No, I watched one of them one night and I lost the will to live. It was beyond boring. If the best the Tory Party can turn out is Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, Jesus, bring back Boris, because at least, they're boring beyond belief, Jude.
Well, it's true. And that was one of the great strengths of Boris. Like him or loathe him, and I think by and large I loathed him, he was a very lively presence. When he was in the room, you sort of knew he was there. Whereas neither of these two particularly. On the other hand, I have to say this. If I had to judge between the two, Sunak and Liz Truss, not for their policies. I think that Sunak is so much more impressive a figure. Like,
let me throw someone at you, Dr. Collins. Jude, I said this, I think, about 3 weeks ago. Jude, do you seriously think that the electorate that's involved in this particular contest, the Tory party membership, they are white, male, mainly over 50. That's the biggest cohort of them. There are obviously others, but the biggest percentage of them are white, male, and over 50. Are you seriously thinking they're going to vote for a guy with the name Rishi Sunak, who is not white, not of their ilk, and not of their whatever? Now, he might be a very rich guy. He might have, all the rest of it. But I don't see the old reactionary white. They still see that the Commonwealth and those countries as beneath them. I don't see they're going to change that when it comes to voting, even no matter how good a politician or how great a chancellor Rishi Sunak was.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a number of reasons why they wouldn't vote for him. I think they're falling in love again with this notion of Liz Truss as Maggie Thatcher reincarnated. I mean, she's dressing like Thatcher. She's talking like Thatcher. You'd almost think she was Thatcher. And, she's against strikes and she's going to ban this and ban that. She's just, I find if I was a Tory voter and I was voting for somebody who seemed capable and got drive and energy and had information, I would vote for Sunak. I mean, I'm not saying Sunak's a nice guy. The choice is between somebody who's going to impose taxes right now or somebody who's going to wait a while and then impose taxes. That's the choice they have. Anyway, one way or another, I think it's going to be Truss. I think they'll be dancing with delight among the, I hope, among the Labour Party.
But one thing you just said there is worth a wee bit of mention. I read Truss has said that she will ban strikes in the public sector, particularly in Jude, where's that's bordering on fascism.
It is. It is certainly not the British tradition where at least you were allowed to have. But do you cast your mind back to Thatcher? And immediately when you say Thatcher to me and strikes, I immediately see these policemen and horses battening miners at some demonstration. I mean, I think that was the day that the trade unions died in a way.
Yeah, but remember you were watching it the same as I was. There was a program on there about a month ago about two murders in a village, and what do you call it? And what the backdrop to the miners' strike. It was a BBC drama.
Yeah.
And but the subtext was that here we are 40 years later, that the coal miners' strike, the bitterness still survives, dude. And in fact, I saw an issue. Thatcher described the miners as thugs, and it's on social media this morning. A young fellow shirtless with a cap, with a big sort of steel helmet on, and a club hitting him. Who were the thugs, dude? So along comes Liz Truss and all this sort of right-wing fascist type of. I think Britain could be in for a hot and heavy couple of years, because do you seriously think as workers get more less and less wages, and there's strikes, and they're going to be ruled out? No, the whole morass of legal strikes on the streets, and I know maybe even police out, confrontation, I would presume, will become an issue.
But the one thing that the media generally, all right across the media, from right wing to left wing in Britain, mainstream media, the one thing they've convinced people is that people go on strike just because they want to get something, they're greedy or whatever. They very, very rarely mention the fact that people who go on strike are giving up their pay for that day.
Yeah.
They're not getting paid that day. So the amount of time they spend on strike is taken out of their pay packets. So you don't do that just for a laugh.
The first question Richard Manley asked in Good Morning Britain, the first question he asked Mick Lynch, this is how the debate is sort of shaped. Are you a Marxist? The first question, not are your members entitled to a pay raise?
Yeah.
What's this about? When did they last get a pay raise? What sort of wages are they on? First question, are you a Marxist? Now, Jude, is that not pro-establishment media?
Of course it is. But I think Mick Lynch has somehow or another managed to cut through that and to establish himself as a formidable figure. Maybe because he talks a lot of sense and talks it in a very matter-of-fact way. And certainly there's an awful lot of people, an awful lot of different unions are lining up to have strikes, short or long, over the next 3 months. So let's hope that something gives. But then, of course, as soon as you have strikes, the Tories will use that as grist to their mill for bringing in repressive laws. And a lot of people like Starmer and company will be saying, "Oh yes, we have to be responsible striking and so on." Let's stop talking about this, Pat. It's giving me a pain in my head. Talk about something else. Talk about the Lionesses. What about that? Let's talk about the Lionesses. What do you think?
Hold on a minute. Dr. Combs last night. Sligo Rovers. Let's talk about that.
There are no Lionesses in Sligo.
No, but a wee club, Sligo Rovers, a League of Ireland club, beat Scottish Giants Motherwell 2-0. And I think it's Europa Conference League.
Yeah. And
they beat them 1-0 over in Scotland. Dude, remember the days? I remember watching Fun Harps getting beaten 12-0 by Derby County, and so on.
That's almost as bad as Linfield.
St. Patrick's Athletic. They beat a Slovenian team who last year beat Tottenham. Jude, and our friend, the Irish team, beat the All Blacks in New Zealand not so long ago. We're living through a golden era, Jude, of sport.
Yeah, well, it's pretty good. I noticed you, Pat, you're very interested in local soccer, or at least you're abreast of the results. I wouldn't have known that happened with Sligo and Motherwell, except you mentioned it to me. I think you come from a long tradition. When I was in St. Columns 100 years ago, roughly, the Boysmen has shown in many cases were devout followers of soccer rather than Gaelic, which always surprised me. I assumed guys from Donegal would be, from the liberated part of our country, and they would be playing games, that would be patriotic games like Gaelic football, but not so. There was a lot of them were, and very, very good. Eddie Mahan's the greatest, best example I can think of. He was from Inishowen, and in St. Colum's, he made no bones about the fact that he was far more interested in soccer than he was in Gaelic. How is that? How is it that Inishowen has so many people interested?
Well, it's a big. Well, for instance, hey, Packy Bonner was from Donegal.
Yes,
Seamus Coleman, the Irish
yes.
captain, and there's I think 3 or 4 young fellas from over here, over playing in England now, for clubs and so on. So there's a big strong. Hey, there was Patsy Gallagher from Ramelton who played for Celtic. I think Wally Mealy played for Celtic. Has people from here. Then Danny McGrain and all those players there, and there was somebody else played for Celtic. As people, Pat Creran has people came from Donegal. There's a massive. I know who played for soccer for Celtic and Manchester United and so on, and Scotland. So there's a big tradition here. So soccer has always been big in Inishowen.
Okay, give you a pass. The Rule 21 is gone now, so it's okay. You can play soccer if you want.
But as for the Lionesses,
yes, exactly. As for the Lionesses, what about them?
The Lionesses. There were 9.2 million people watching the game. It was against Sweden, and it's football is coming home again.
Yeah.
Is it Germany they're playing on?
Yes, Sunday? Playing Germany on Sunday. Did you watch the games? Any of the games?
I dip in and out. I have to say this. The standard of football, ladies football, has come way up. The level of fitness has come way up as well. They were knackered. I watched about the first 15-20 minutes, and then I came back towards the end. And their passing ability is way up as well. And I noticed there was one girl, don't ask me her name, and I think a ball came away out of the air, and she absolutely trapped it brilliantly. So, now, Jude, here, let me start an argument with you. The claim is that if the men's Wimbledon champion played the women's Wimbledon champion, that she'd be lucky to get a point. If the England male soccer team played the female soccer team, it would be a total rout. So where is the argument for paying them both the same amount of money?
Well, I leave aside for a moment the question of paying them. I always sort of judge them in terms of entertainment. Like you mentioned a couple of things, moments where they did, beautiful piece of work where they trapped the ball or they took a shot or whatever. And that's true. Some of the moments within those games were very good. But last night, I think it was, or the night before, I watched France and Germany. And I'll tell you the truth, Pat, there was a lot of clumsiness. If those had been men, you would have said, well, that's probably, it would hardly qualify as FAI football. Maybe a shade lower than that. Now, I don't mean to be hard on them. And, they were making their way into a world where they've been blocked at every turn. But I don't think they're as wonderful as everybody is saying. I suppose the final on Sunday might tell us that one way or another. The other thing, of course, is that they're all white. And that hasn't been clarified. Now, again, I wouldn't put people into the side because they're black or the brown or whatever. But it is striking that given the fact that so many young guys of color or women of color play soccer, especially soccer, but play all sorts of sports, how come there isn't a single one makes it on?
Sure, there is. I thought there's a couple of people of color on the England team.
On the Lionesses? No, not in the Lionesses, not on the first team. Now, there might be somebody on the bench, but there's not a single face other than as white as your own, Pat. So, okay, now I'm keeping my eye on the clock here, and I think we're 5 minutes. So, do we want to push on? Can we drag ourselves away from the Lionesses before they devour us?
Jude, well, the big news last night in the Republic was the fact that they've agreed a deal for carbon emissions. It's not exactly a sexy subject, but the impact of it.
Why do you say that, Pat? Why do you say that?
A lot of people, when you start talking about carbon emissions, you can nearly see people going, Jesus, here we go again. But they're talking about 25% reduction in carbon emissions. There was a guy on, he was a farmer from somewhere down in Wexford for Waterford, and he's 700 cattle. Yeah. He said 25% reduction means I have to get rid of 25% of my cattle. He says, I am struggling right now to make ends meet. meat. Not even intended pun. But he says, right, if I have to get rid of that 25% of my cattle, I am gone. And he says the implications for you, the listeners or the viewers, is the days of cheap food are gone as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the trouble is that everything is costing more and more and more and more. Like any number of things have gone up 50%, like electricity bills and so on. People are paying half as much again as they were.
Yeah.
This farmers thing, you know, the what do they call it? The national herd.
Yeah.
It's tricky now. My father was a cattle farmer, or a cattle dealer, so I'd be loath to take away the bite the hand that fed me. But the fact of the matter is, cows belch and cows fart, and that is contributing, I gather, a significant degree to the state of the environment. If that's the case, the government must find a way to solve this problem. If that guy can't live with the loss of 25% of whatever he's doing now, then the government must step in and somehow support him. I don't know how they do that, but maybe they could start by getting rid of those bloody Mercedes and generating.
There's
sell Aris and Uachtaráin. Let Michael D. Higgins live in a flat.
No, no, it's not Aris and Uachtaráin. It's one at Phoenix Park.
Aye.
Aris and Uachtaráin. What am I saying? I was thinking on Dáil Éireann, Aris and Uachtaráin. Right, the president's palace. Yeah, sorry, my apologies.
Yeah,
no, Jude, there was a thing on the other night. There was a map of all the planes over Europe. And there were, and Jude, there was about, I don't know, 600 or 700 planes flying at the one time.
Yeah.
And somebody says, is someone seriously suggesting cows farting is on a par with the contrails of 600 planes? By the way, there's somebody else I read somewhere. They said Brazil they have something like 40 million cattle, and they intend to increase their herd. So if we cut our herd, they said we will have less, but we'll be importing beef from Brazil. So we'll have to bring it.
I know the point you're making. Well, I'd say two things, because there's only about, let's say, 90 seconds left. One, I would say, is you've got to do the right thing. Regardless of what other people do, if you believe in a thing, you should do it. Even if you feel that it'll not make that much difference, you have to do the right thing. I think you should try to do the right thing. The other thing is meat eaters. We're meat eaters. I would have no bother to save the planet, if this is saving the planet, moving to vegetarian. In fact, I rarely eat meat now. I usually have fish or something like that. And for when my daughter was over, she's a vegan, and she got stuff in the supermarket, and I tasted some of it. It's very nice, actually. So maybe we've all got to make sacrifices. How unhappy would you be, Pat, if you never ate another piece of meat in your life?
It wouldn't break my heart. Definitely.
You see, I'm
the same as you. Last while, Jude, if I was given me choices on my life to live over again, I would not eat meat at all.
Exactly. And I think people would even make sacrifices at this stage in their lives. I'm not saying you're old, Pat. Not saying you're old.
But the white hair and the white beard tends to sort of give it away.
I'm somebody to be talking. Okay. Listen, Pat, we're going to have to. Any jokes? Quick? No jokes?
No
jokes. Oh, jeez, Pat. No. What's the point of coming on here?
What's the point of coming on the stage? Yes. Okay, Jude.
Okay, Pat.
Good luck. Cheers.
Good luck.
Bye.